Hi guys, Marian here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about going to Jewish day school, and I'm really excited because I'm being joined by Chris Donahoe, who's the Director of Admissions at Bowerman Elementary School in Los Angeles. And I feel so honored to have him here because I asked you guys on Instagram what questions you had about sending your children to Jewish day school, and I got so many questions. So I'm so excited to have Chris here to be able to answer them from a school perspective and also be sharing my perspective with you guys because I went to Jewish day school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and it definitely shaped my life, who I am as a Jewish person, who I am as a person in general. And I was just thinking, Chris, I was going to tell you this, that my birthday was yesterday, and it amazed me that so many of the people that reached out to just wish me a happy birthday, so many of these connections that I have are my friends from elementary school, my friends from 35 years, because I literally started there actually in preschool. So it's so special to discuss this topic, and you guys were so interested in this topic. So I'm going to let Chris introduce himself a little bit and his school. Then I'll get into the questions you guys sent, and then at the end, I'm going to answer the number one question that you guys had for me specifically, which is, are my kids going to Jewish day school? So I'm going to save that one for the end. Let's jump into Chris. Tell us about Bowerman Elementary School in Los Angeles.
First of all, thank you for having me here, Marian, and happy birthday. Hope you're having a great celebration week. So yes, my name is Chris Donahoe. I'm the Director of Admissions at Bowerman Elementary School here in Los Angeles. We do have 2 campuses, which is really great to serve families on both sides of the city. This is my 9th year here at the school, my 3rd year in admissions, and I've worn a few different hats, but I've taught kindergarten, I've taught 1st grade. So I think that's a nice thing to inform my process and working with families and seeing children for who they are at such a young age. And Bowerman Elementary is just such a strong community. Mm-hmm. It's really where you can go and live your entire life. And we're under a larger temple, the Wilshire Boulevard Temple, that has just a lot of resources, camps and programming and things like that. But the schools are really special in that we really work hard to meet children where they are at, mm-hmm. and at the same time give them an excellent academic foundation to prepare them for middle school, and all the while teaching them values just to be good human beings and find their own sense of identity, like you were kind of mentioning, whether that's the Jewish part of themselves or how they connect with their family in that way, or just who they are as a human being.
I love that. And I didn't know that you had taught kindergarten and 1st grade. That is so cool. So let's jump into the questions. These are not in any specific order, but these are the most popular questions that I got on Instagram. Number 1, if your child or family are not very religious, is your kid going to feel left out at Jewish day school?
Yeah, and I think we're kind of clarifying here. We all know that there's different, whether you're Orthodox or conservative. Bowerman happens to be a Reformed Jewish day school. So I think that one, people know, or families know, if they are more religious, they kind of know the schools that they're looking at. So to just kind of speak to the Reform lens, yes, absolutely. I myself am not Jewish. And I remember wondering, what will that be like coming here? And the principal at the time said, you need to think about, will you be okay with that? And my first thought was, will the parents be okay with that? Right. And she said that there's going to be people who feel more comfortable because Chris Donahoe works here. Mm. And there are many mixed families. And I think if I can feel comfortable here, anyone can feel comfortable here. And I think I thought it could be an issue, it was a non-issue. And I think that is the same for families, no matter where they are. It doesn't affect our Judaics. It just means that kids are more aware of what is in the world around them and outside of what is their own. So
I love that. I love the welcoming ethos. I think we will probably hear more about that in the rest of the questions too, but that is definitely one of the reasons I was so excited to highlight you guys. Okay, let's move on to a totally separate topic, but one that I know a lot of parents are concerned about, which is, what is the transition out of this beautiful bubble of Jewish day school like when it's time to go to high school and college and beyond?
I guess I want to kind of go back a step and remind people that those transitions are different for every child, no matter where your child goes to school. It all depends then, like, those next steps, kind of who your child is, where they are. Like, so, it depends, but students, I think what's nice is our students have a lot of interest. So, and when they go to other schools, they're involved because they're involved here. Going back to the values piece you were talking about, when you have kids leaving your school who are just good people are going to gravitate towards them. If they're the person who's being nice, making room at the lunch table, giving someone a helping hand, people are going to be drawn to people that are just nice to be around and have good energy. So
I think also from my personal experience with that, I realized looking back on it that one of the things I really gained by being in such a, small and supportive environment like a Jewish day school is I gained a lot of confidence. And when I went to high school, looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? But like you said, I was president of all the clubs and running for student government and played on all the sports teams, even though I might not have had the skills necessary for those things. But in my mind, I could do it all because I grew up with this sense of confidence and love and support by the school community. So I never doubted my own abilities in that way. And that's, I think, one of the strongest things that's carried me through onto college and everything else. And I went to one of the most rigorous, high schools in Los Angeles area. And then I graduated and went to UCLA and Georgetown. So I experienced all different sorts of learning opportunities and environments. And especially in college, when I really had to do everything for myself, I relied on that sense of self-worth and self-confidence. And that was the strongest thing, in addition to an excellent education that I was given, that has helped me throughout my life. Okay, next question. What percentage of the education is focused on religion? I should say Jewish studies and Hebrew.
Great. Yeah, I'll talk about those two things separately. I guess I'll start with Hebrew. Hebrew is taught separately from Judaism for the most part. We teach Hebrew for second language acquisition. Mm-hmm. So students are learning all these conversational aspects of Hebrew, just like if you were learning any other language. They're learning about how to order when they go to a restaurant, how to identify, right? It is just the building blocks. So if you took another language growing up, maybe it was Spanish, you're learning the same sort of thing so that you can converse. Yeah. And I've had the privilege of going with our students to Israel 5 times, which is quite incredible. And the students always know more than they think they know. And the tour guides and the vendors in the different markets and shuks will say, wow, like they want to test them, right? And they're really surprised at how good their Hebrew is. It's really great, but it is taught separately. The students have that 4 times a week for 45 minutes. And regardless of whether or not you want your child to continue with Hebrew or not, learning those skills of second language acquisition at such a young age is going to prepare them to be exposed to any other sort of language. It's really important. And there's a lot of science and brain science you could look up on your own time to kind of affirm that. As far as Judaics go, and sometimes there is overlap, right? Our school, and I think most schools in general, are always trying to do cross-curricular. We do it. Right. So it doesn't mean that you have to say, this is this time, this is this time. If there's overlap, if there's holidays, that's great. That just means they're learning in 2 different ways or 2 modalities or subjects at the same time, and that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Our Judaics, I went through and actually calculated this because I know parents are concerned right now. They feel like their children have missed out on, being in remote learning, if that's the case, and they want to make sure their children are caught up academically. At our school, students are on campus for 36 hours and 15 minutes a week. I just had to do the math. The amount that is specifically dedicated to Judaics is only 2 hours. Wow. It's only a 30-minute Shabbat that families are invited to, and I think no matter where you are, everyone's like, Shabbat, it's wonderful, it's student-led here. And then we have other things like a Limud Torah, a tefillah during the week where they're learning some more of the traditional aspects, and it raises up, grade by grade. But I think what people often miss too is it isn't, again, with the crossing over, that like our Hebrew is taught in the same style as our reading curriculum, where you're doing these different things, whether it's writing or listening or speaking with a partner. And so in these different aspects where or times where students are learning about Judaics, they're also practicing and reinforcing their writing skills, their ability to critically think. We don't just say like, here's Judaism and take everything we just said. They're invited. I mean, I wish we could have one of the rabbis on here because they have such in-depth conversations with the students. And I think that when you allow students, because as we already mentioned, every family is a little different, right?
Right.
For as many different Jews as there's that many different types of Judaism, and we just want students to build their own. And when students are allowed to question and critically think about that very foundation, they grow up to be really out of the box thinkers and creative. And they don't just take something at face value. And if, in the world today, I think that's what we want from our students. So
this makes me think of a really random story, but you just brought it vividly back in my mind. This was from middle school, but a Jewish school. It was our health class, and we were talking about like girls getting their period and all this like super embarrassing stuff, for 12 and 13-year-olds. And we actually had our teacher talk about how we are all created in the image of God, and it's all about like loving your body and all that stuff. So it was a health lesson. It had nothing to do with Judaism, but her words really stuck with me, especially at that crucial age. And to me, that's one of those like inexplicable things that you get with a Jewish day school education. Not only that love and warmth that you feel when you're there that I felt all my years growing up, but those little moments where Judaism and the values of Judaism are woven in always struck with me.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say what it is a springboard. It is an opportunity to use that and to connect with students on something they get, because ultimately parents want their children to be good people.
Yeah.
Right. We want to work with good people. We want to live next to good people. And that's a huge part of it. You're totally right. Okay.
Let's talk about the number one most popular question that I got asked. And you guys will see why it's totally a hot topic right now, which is, how do we address diversity exposure or lack thereof if you send your kids to Jewish day school?
Yeah, you're spot on. This is such an important thing, and for good reason. I think many people who felt like they grew up in a bubble from the Midwest, the suburbs of Chicago, so wasn't a ton of diversity, is so important. And there's a little bit of both. I'll talk about a little bit of both. One, there is more diversity sometimes at Jewish schools than you think. Take a trip to Israel and see how many people that you see walking around, in Jerusalem from different countries. So as I stepped into this position as director of admissions, I would have these great conversations with families. I get to know about the parents. And I started to realize there are people from so many places, Central and South America, from Eastern Europe, of course, from Israel, families from Iran, from Europe. Like, it is just incredible. So I'd say, one, we want to teach kids about diversity and expose them so they don't judge people at face value. So take a second to get to know the school. There could be more than just what you see at the surface in a lot of experiences. A second part, at our school specifically, we are constantly using, I think, living in California is a nice advantage because and Los Angeles is very diverse. Right. But we are constantly, it's very intentional. The authors that we introduce our students to, who are contemporary, who have different backgrounds, the speakers that we have, the type of organizations that when our students are doing passion projects or like a Tikkun Olam initiative, who we're inviting to hear them speak. The schools that we play against in sports, whether they're a Catholic school or some tournaments we play in with other public schools in exposure. And we show kids that like, there isn't just Judaism in the world. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some intentional ways. And I think that just ask to speak to some of the parents, ask to speak to some of the teachers and hear how they explicitly teach it. Because you are right to be concerned about that. It is super important. I also think that there's opportunities for families, right? Where does your child go to play on sports teams or participate in musical theater? Who are your friends? Where do you go to expose yourselves to different things so you can see more of the world and make sure that your child sees those things? So it is a little bit of both, but I think most schools, definitely ours, but I'm sure a lot others are really leaning into that because of how important it is.
I think also sometimes that's the most important thing, is that it is top of mind. Nobody's pretending this isn't an issue that's not important. And it sounds like you guys are so focused on it. So like you said, kind of how Judaism is woven throughout the curriculum in ways, throughout the day. I'm sure it sounds like that diversity and that kind of learning is also woven throughout. Okay, I'm going to move on to our last question, which is another one of the most popular ones because I think it's definitely something that is prohibitive for a lot of families, and that's cost. We just need to talk about it because Jewish day school can be expensive. So I had a lot of questions asking about cost. Are there scholarship opportunities? Is it worth the cost? Can you give kind of some perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're comparing a Jewish day school education to public school, which is free, essentially paid by your property tax, it is more expensive. So it is apples to oranges in that way. I would also say that Jewish day schools typically tend to be a little less expensive than other secular schools. Not always, but often they are. So you can take that into consideration. And I believe that for sure here, I think we have between 30 and 40% of our families who receive financial aid. And at other Jewish day schools, there's also those things. So, if you're looking at schools, what they're doing is they're putting money away and creating endowments. During this time, families have been affected by COVID, and we've extended again, even after we did our normal financial aid, to say, if you've been impacted, let us know. We want to keep you here. We want to help you. So I would say, don't allow it to be a factor. Because what happens is when you apply to a school, you're going to get your decision, and your decision is going to be accompanied by your financial aid reward. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to leave you in the lurch, as it were. You're going to know if this is an option for you. And traditionally, if your income is staying relatively the same, you're going to get that same amount of tuition. Where that cost is, right? Like what are we weighing out here? What is the value here? I think right now is a really big time where people are aware of that. It's unfortunate. Yeah. It feels so bad, like almost guilty to talk about those things because there's so many students, so many families who are having such a difficult time. Mm-hmm. But in talking about, I would say my school a little bit, the students, like that individualized education that students get here and that we tell people you're going to get, people are seeing that, right? Mm-hmm. They're seeing how much we care, how much we're putting into student crates so that students have things to engage in. While I hope things change quickly so that all students are able to move forward and grow and progress, at least for our school where sometimes people do, right? They're evaluating that cost. How does that influence our life? Is it worth it for my child? I think people are seeing that it really is because we know who their child is, and we reach them where they are, and we continue to move them up. I think at not just my school, definitely Jewish schools in general, people know you. You walk onto campus, you're not just some stranger in a huge public school where you walk around and your teacher and the principal has no idea who you are. Our doors are open to families. We have conversations with them all the time to hear what's going on. During the beginning of the pandemic in the spring, when no one knew what was happening, we're having an office hour for parents 3 times a week for an hour. And we would listen to what is working and what isn't working. And we kept pivoting it. And finally we moved it to 2 times a week, right? And we still do those things because we're your partner. And I think that that's one of those things you get from a Jewish day school is a partnership, because it's easy to sell people when things are going great and your child is blossoming and blooming and doing great things in class. You want someone who's going to be there during the tough times, like an unseen pandemic, or when your child is struggling in certain ways, academically or socially. And those are some of the important things of this time in education for your child. And that's something that Jewish day schools do very well.
I love that. And that brings me to what I said at the beginning that I would reveal is whether or not my own kids are going to Jewish day school. So my boys are 4 and 1 years old. So we have probably about 2 more years before we have to finally decide on this. But it has been top of my mind. And what I will say is, I don't know yet 100%. I can't say for sure. But what I will say is that being at a Jewish preschool right now has given us, like you were talking about, Chris, the sense of community, togetherness that has absolutely just been such a blessing in the pandemic. And actually, my older son not being in preschool, right when the beginning of the pandemic hit, was the hardest thing, not just for the education, not just for him, but for me, because I really missed the community that we have at the school. So I absolutely, value it. And I have valued this conversation so much for my own personal decision on this. And I hope that you guys watching this have also learned a lot about what goes into a Jewish education from the school's perspective, as well as from a parent's perspective and former students' perspective. So if you guys have any more questions for Chris, you can leave them in the comments down below. I will also put all the links to Bowerman Elementary as well as their social media so you can interact with them there. And anything else you guys want or need, just let us know. We know that this is such a crazy year for so many parents, and I'm sure, Chris, you agree with me that we just wish you guys well and all the best for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. Really appreciate it. And like you said, good luck to all the families. This is such a tough time. One suggestion I would give is pick up the phone and call people. Sometimes people feel like they're bothering me because it is a busy time, and that's my job. And every other admissions director, that's their job, is to answer your question whenever you have it. So pick up the phone. You're never bothering us. We love interacting with humans right now. So just give us a jingle and we're happy to help in any way.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to my channel down below. Check out the links I put in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.